Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Optimizing Your Life Science Events with Smarter Budgeting. My name is Olivia Pelzer, and I am one of your hosts today. Just to go over a few housekeeping items off the top, on the right of your screen in Attendee Hub, you can join the chat where you can submit questions in the Q&A, and we will be answering your questions during and after the presentation today. Please also take a moment after the session to fill out the survey. We appreciate all feedback so we can continue to improve our webinars for you. And you can also register for any of our upcoming webinars on the right as well. And to download this slide deck that we share and any other documents related to this, you can click the details link on the bottom right of your screen. So as I said, I am Olivia Pelzer. I am a Senior Client Success Manager on our Enterprise Accounts team. I've been working with a variety of life science clients for the last 5 years at Cvent and guiding them through using our technology to support their meeting programs. I previously was a meeting organizer like many of you listening today. And being on this side, I really enjoy helping my clients learn about the efficiency Cvent can bring to their program and partnering with them successfully day to day. I'll pass to my colleague Kelly now to introduce herself.
Yes, hi everyone. My name is Kelly Moore, and I too am a Senior Client Success Manager here at Cvent, working with enterprise level accounts, many of whom are in the life sciences space. I've been with Cvent for about a year, but prior to this, I was working as a Cvent system administrator and working within some life sciences companies to help design their processes and procedures around using their meetings technology.
Great. Well, we're excited to bring you some content today on the life sciences industry and what's impacting your budgets. So we'll start off with just talking about the factors impacting your day-to-day. We'll jump into a little bit around the life cycle of budget and spend tracking, and we'll give you a sneak peek into Cvent's budget module and how you can achieve what we're discussing today within Cvent. And of course, we'll have time for Q&A. So put those questions in the chat as they come up. So let's jump right in. What's impacting you all day to day? Cvent recently conducted a study with Forrester and found that life sciences companies host more events than any other industry surveyed. Between the importance of achieving your business goals within events and the economic pressures you face, there's always more of a hyper focus on being cost effective within life sciences. Life sciences was also the only industry surveyed where controlling costs ranked among their top most priorities. You're all very aware of some of these factors we're showing today, and Kelly and I speak to clients every day and continue to hear about the demands on event organizers, from sourcing within stricter budgets with rising costs of food and beverage and meeting space, and the current economy looming with possible thoughts of recession. And running a meeting program is already the most stressful job that there is. And this just adds more pressure to executing your events efficiently and accurately being able to track that spend. So budgeting is obviously top of mind for event organizers. In that same study, life sciences respondents say that events are vitally important to their organization. However, they lack the right data to understand their impact. They found that many companies use up to 6 or more tools to manage their events day to day, and they don't always have the infrastructure to support their integration needs. We continue to see life sciences clients using things like Excel spreadsheets to track budget, using different systems dependent on their region or event type. And it's really important to start assessing what you're doing today so you can meet some of your more compliance requirements depending on if they're regional or federal regulations. We see an increased focus on cost savings like we discussed, and the need to maximize your technology and consolidate where possible has never been more important. With that, let's take a pause and take a quick poll to understand your biggest challenges within your meeting budget today. What's keeping you up at night? We're interested to hear if you fall into some of the factors we've talked about or if there are other challenges that you have that we did not cover. So you should see a poll now. All right, we're seeing some answers coming in. I see that, Kelly, do you want to look through some of those answers and
Yes,
reflect?
I'm seeing, okay, so the biggest response we're getting is those increasing vendor costs, like Olivia was just speaking about. And that matches up to what we hear on a daily basis from our clients. And okay, that's interesting too. Current processes are not flexible enough for my needs and having the correct resources and staffing to manage whatever the needs are. Yep, we can relate and we know what you're talking about. And we're hoping that today you'll walk away with some ideas to help you tackle those challenges that you're facing. Okay. Interesting, not entirely surprising, but thank you all for participating in that poll. Okay. So, with all of that said, budgeting doesn't have to be as difficult as sometimes people perceive it to be. I have been working in the meetings and events industry for a little over 15 years. And in that time, I have always heard this, like I said, this perception that things are so difficult when it comes to managing budgets. We have to worry about negotiating with our vendors and recording what our budgets are and getting those budgets approved, recording the actuals and all the different categories that organizations are interested in knowing about, or how much we're spending in accommodations and food and beverage and so forth. But it really doesn't have to be that hard. I think some of the keys to making it more manageable include consolidating the technology that you're using. Have all of these things happening in one place to make it easier and more efficient on all of us who are doing this work. I think another thing when an organization is designing their processes and their procedures from the beginning is to involve all of the stakeholders who will have a part in it, including different regions around the globe. So I know that many of us in this life sciences industry work on a global basis with colleagues all over the world. And if we can incorporate all of the needs from all of those different regions into the processes designed, you're going to get better buy-in, and it's just going to be easier to manage and give the results that we're all looking for in the end with our reporting. I also find that some of the biggest barriers to adopting good budgeting is that there aren't very well defined processes and there isn't enough training going on, that all of the people who need to do this task know what they have to do and that everyone's doing it in a consistent way. And especially too, then you'll need someone who's auditing the process and making sure that people are doing things correctly and can see where help may be needed, and have somebody on the team who can be that point person to answer questions about how things are supposed to be done and to lend a helping hand, especially as this is new to some people, or if things are changing in the way that you all are managing how you do your budgets. But basically, I think the goal for all of us should be to simplify the process and focus on our people and focus on the platforms being used to manage this task. That's where we should focus our efforts to make things easy, efficient, and successful. So, having a programmatic approach, getting everyone doing the same thing, will give organizations a consistent view into what is being spent on meetings and events and in what areas. It's not as scary as sometimes people think.
Yeah, and I think this quote really speaks to what we've discussed so far. You can't improve what you don't measure. So on the heels of what Kelly just said, it's really important to be measuring all events at some capacity. And it might be just with starting something small. So setting up smaller goals to make it less complex for everyone to follow and building upon that as you gain adoption with budgeting, to then eventually lead to that greater reporting within your meetings and events program. So looking at that in action, when you think about budgeting, it's not just tracking each line item. Every aspect of your planning process should be included in your budget policy or process that you implement. So looking at an actual meeting intake form, how are you collecting all the information around your event that will end up impacting your budget? And then how is all of that data going over to an RFP or to whoever is sourcing that event so they understand what they have to be looking at in the sourcing process? And then through the awarding of an RFP, how is that data then going back to the planner or event organizer to actually track the day-to-day expenses of the event and what impacts each attendee's travel and registration process have on the budget as well. And then finally recording all of those actuals in one place and actually being able to understand what the full impact of the event was. This, in theory, is best practice for what we see our clients doing, but it's not always easy to get everyone started in the right place. We'll show you what this looks like in action in Cvent today.
Okay, so like Olivia was saying, the budgeting process starts from the beginning, from the meeting request form or the meeting intake form, however you do that. So you're going to want to make sure that you design a process where upon someone requesting to have a meeting, they are going to be sharing as much information as possible, including budget estimates or approved budgets, including other needs for the meeting. This will make things efficient so that the sourcing agent or the people who are planning this meeting have as much information as they can have upfront as they begin their task to get to organize the meeting, to source for the meeting. So you can see here a snapshot of what a meeting request might look like. It includes a place for a budget estimate so that people know what they're working within. And you can even ask for requirements for meeting space or for sleeping room requirements or for anything else that's needed. So then when that meeting request is assigned to the appropriate planner or sourcing manager, they've got enough information to get started efficiently without having to go back and forth.
And then you would take that request and data and move it into your RFP. So whoever's picking up that request and actually sourcing will have everything pre-filled out for them, or as much as possible. And they would just start actually looking for venues that meet that need, entering actual space requirements and meeting room requirements. Having all of this up front really is a positive impact on the sourcing agent and saves them time, which in turn will save your organization money to be able to move these RFPs through quicker in your planning process. So once that agent then completes the sourcing, they're handing it back over to the planner.
And one way we see this done, like in our best practice accounts that we work with, is they have perhaps a status on the meeting request form to indicate, all right, it was in sourcing status, that is finished. And so now we're going to change it to planning status. And with that change, it's also possible to have an email notification go to whoever is assigned as the planner to the meeting so they are aware sourcing is complete. Now it's time to start their job and planning the logistics for the meeting itself. All can be done automatically.
And then the planner will take over and actually track the ongoing expenses day to day of their events, hopefully throughout the planning process. We know they might not do this every day, but having some kind of check marks throughout the planning to track how that spend is changing. and also tracking that attendee data. So understanding what the attendees that they need to report on, what their travel could be that will impact the budget as well. All of this could be centrally located to make it easier to report holistically.
Right. All that information in one place is going to be easier to manage than having it in separate places. But the next step is going to be starting after the meeting completes, after the meeting has been held. We can start to record our actuals, and then especially important for life sciences companies is to associate spend to the various participants of the event. So we'll start recording our actual costs in our budget, and then we'll have a way to tell the system which of our healthcare professionals incurred that cost. And so that will all be available for reporting later, which we all know for compliance reasons is very important to this industry. And it's easy to do. It's sensible and logical and intuitive on how it's done, and it will help you meet all your reporting needs.
And finally, just a preview of what that reporting could look like. So being able to have more of an overview of your budget, so understanding the line items that your planner is entering day to day is an option to send to either stakeholders or report on internally. And then we also could break it down even further and look at that spend per attendee. So understanding which, like we said, which of the costs are that you'll have to report back on for each attendee is available out of the box for you within Cvent. We're going to actually look at this in action and what this would look like if you were using Cvent's budget module. So I will pass it over to Kelly to begin walking through
that. On this meeting request form, with all of the other event details that we're collecting, we are collecting a budget estimate. There's many ways you can do this. This is a good way with this widget we can put onto the meeting request form to provide an estimate that our sourcing agents and our logistics planners know the budget that they're working against. And there are also easy ways to let the requester of this meeting indicate what their sleeping room needs are and their meeting room requirements and anything else that you'd like to collect there. And then as we go over into the event, this is where the budgeting is going to be done. And if we go into the budget over here, I will show you a few things about how this is going to work. Okay. First of all, I'm going to show you a summary screen. So I've already got some budget items entered into this budget. So here is a good summary of what has been entered so far. And I can choose, and you all can choose on an account level, what you want to collect here. Budgeted, negotiated, actual. Some only do budgeted and actual, but it's up to you the points in time that you want to collect numbers for. And you can also define some savings formulas, budgeted versus negotiated, or perhaps actual versus what was budgeted. And the system will do all of the calculations for you so you will know where you stand along the way. It also gives you a good snapshot here of where you're spending per category. You as an organization will define the categories that are most interesting and important to you. And here you will see a snapshot by category, and you can do the same by vendor for what's already been entered into the budget. And as we go here to budget items, you'll see on this screen all of the different budget items which have already been entered into this budget. So you'll see I've got a couple of meals already entered. I've got some car service and some welcome gifts entered. And on this screen, what's really great about this is that every user can tailor this to look whatever is most useful to them. So we can, for example, choose what columns along the top here we would like to see. you can see that I've got checked off what I am interested in seeing. But like if I didn't want to see total budgeted, I could remove that and make this how I would like to see it. And every time that a change is made, you'll see this little red dot here, and it gives you the option to save this particular view as your own view. So whenever you come back into this screen, you've got things set up exactly how you would like them to look, however it's convenient for you. And it's just a little bit of a time saver. And the customization just allows the users to see what's important to them. We can do all kinds of things here. Like if I just wanted to see food and beverage right now and see what I've got going on there, I can change that. There are a number of different ways you can tailor this to your preferences. I can also do things like export this all, and I've got a number of different ways to also add budget items to this budget. I'm going to show you how to add things one by one, but I also would like you to know that there are ways where you can take an import. You can have an Excel spreadsheet of your budget items, and then you can import all of that into here, which is convenient and it saves time. And it might be the preferred way to do this for some people. And you can also, within the system, design budget templates. And where that will help you is if you've got certain meeting types where you consistently know what your budget is going to consist of, you can make budget templates and that will help your users along. It will get things started for them. So, for example, if you've got investigator meetings happening frequently at your organization and you know that your investigator meetings, you've always got ground transportation, you've always got your sleeping rooms, you've always got meals. You can make a budget template that a user can then just apply to their budget and it gets things started for them so they have less work to do when it comes to entering in their budget. But I will show you how to add budget items individually and show you what this is all about. All right, so we are going to add a budget item manually. Let's say I'm going to add breakfast in. You will see all of these different fields here that can be populated. I want you to know though that within the administration section, you can tailor this to what's important to your organization. Code. Maybe you have something that should go into code, maybe you don't. You've got the option to make this a required field, an optional field, or you have the option to remove it entirely. So that's just one thing that your planners are not going to see and have to deal with when they're entering their budget. It's up to you. And same thing with status. A lot of organizations don't really use this, but a lot of them do. It's up to you. You can make this required, optional, or just get rid of it entirely if it doesn't mean anything to you. So it's one last thing your users have to see. And then we have categories along with the item date. That's the date that the expense is going to be incurred. The categories, you can design your category list to whatever is meaningful to your organization, what categories of spend you would like to report on. And I would encourage everyone that when you're making your category list, to make it comprehensive enough that you're going to be able to report how you need to report, but not too overwhelming that users won't know what to choose when they're trying to enter something in. So I'll enter food and beverage for this breakfast. And to go along with the category, we also have a list of subcategories, which again can be made optional, mandatory if you'd like, or hidden entirely. But the subcategory list then will correspond to whatever category was chosen. I would encourage the same thing. Make it comprehensive enough that you'll get the reporting that you need, but not too much that people will get confused, not know what to choose, and maybe just skip it entirely. General ledger codes are important to some organizations and not to others. Likewise, you can choose whether to display this or not, or make it mandatory or not. As we go down the page here, then we can associate a vendor to this budget item, the vendor for this breakfast. And this is important to do because when you assign vendors to these budget line items, you'll be able to, of course, report on this event, which vendors were having money spent on them. And then later across events, you'll be able to run reports to find out how much did we spend in a given time period with XYZ vendor. So I would encourage you to make it part of the process that you associate a vendor to each budget line item. And you can do that by either selecting a vendor from the Cvent supplier network, which would be a listing globally of meeting space venues, hotels, and such. Or your organization can also have a list of other vendors that are not hotels, not meeting space. For example, restaurants or decor companies or ground transportation companies that you frequently work with. You can have those put into the system so they're available for selection as well. So I'll say I'm going to Kelly's Test Restaurant for this breakfast and move on down the page where we come to spend per participant. How do we want to report on this particular budget item? When it comes to reporting costs against healthcare professionals, I know that's always going to be top of mind for everyone in the life sciences business. We can easily choose to associate this breakfast spend to no one, to everyone who is registered for the meeting, or just to certain people. Or you can even do selected sessions of the event. I will choose to say that I would like to have this breakfast associated to just selected registrants. And here in this drop down, I will see a list of my participants to this meeting. So I can say I'm going to select to associate this breakfast to my HCPs. The HCPs are indicated here so I can see who they are. You might be asking yourself, how does this little HCP indicator appear next to these particular people? And here's what the answer is. Here's what we can do. In the administration section, you all as an organization can set who should have this HCP flag next to them. And it's usually based on a custom contact field that would either be uploaded with your attendee list with these particular people, or it would be something that these people would be filling in as they registered for an event. So it might be something like some kind of HCP ID that you all have. Maybe it's an NPI number, maybe it's a different custom contact field that you all designed to indicate who's an HCP or not. But that's where the system knows who's an HCP or not based on what you all define. Okay. So I'm going to associate my breakfast to my 3 HCPs. I can specify currencies that I'm reporting in. It's completely possible to have multiple currencies so you all can record your costs in the currency that the cost was incurred in. I'll leave it in US dollars. And then further down the page, here we're going to start actually entering in what the costs were. We need to decide whether it is a fixed or a variable cost. A fixed cost is something that there's like a one-time, one charge for it. Maybe it is meeting room rental charge. Variable costs are where there is a per unit fee for something. So sleeping rooms are an excellent example of when you'd want to use variable cost. You had 20 hotel rooms at $200 each. I'm going to leave my breakfast as a variable cost. I'm going to say I had 3 breakfasts and put in the cost for each. I can also indicate whether the cost I am entering includes the tax and gratuity or not, and whether I want tax calculated on the gratuity. I'll say it doesn't. All right. So I'm going to say I had budgeted for 3 breakfasts, and my budgeted cost was $50 for each breakfast with, let's say, an 18% gratuity. And then you all also can indicate what taxes are important to you. You can have multiple taxes, VAT taxes for some of the people outside of the United States. There's certain Canadian taxes that I know are relevant. You can, as an organization, define what taxes to show here, whatever suits you. Okay. And then this will all calculate for you to get the total. And I'll say I had 3 negotiated, and with my excellent negotiating skills, I managed to get the price down to $45 rather than 50, with the same 18% gratuity and the same 8% tax. And finally, in the end, after the event happened, I indeed had 3 breakfasts, and they were indeed $45 each, with the 18% gratuity and the 8% tax. Okay. Cost avoidance. This is something you can also decide to display or not. Every organization seems to define cost avoidance in a little different way. So you all may have your own idea of what cost avoidance is. I see this sometimes clients are using this to account for things that they got for free at the event, or things that happened after a contract was signed. This is up to you, but whatever you do put into a cost avoidance, you can put in the amount and put in a description, and this is all reportable as well. Put in some notes if you need to. And finally, allocations. Now, one thing that is different for those of you who have been longtime users of Cvent, allocations previously were needed for costs to appear on a spend per participant report, but that's no longer the case. Whatever, as I go back up here, the spend per participant, whatever we indicated here, whatever registrants we associated to this budget line item will show up on the spend per participant report. Allocations now come in if you would like to make allocations to split, have a way to split costs between maybe different departments. Something like that would be a use case. But if this is not relevant to you, you don't even need to show this, so that your planners, when they come in here, they have a simplified view. They're not seeing things that don't apply to them, and they can move on and save that budget line item. And then I'll get back here to my view of all of the different budget line items I have going on. And you can see there's my breakfast, and it calculated all of that tax and gratuity and everything for me. It's all nice. I don't have to worry about that. And it totals everything up down at the bottom too, so I can see where I stand right now. Okay, so I could continue to add budget line items as appropriate. And then finally, I'd want to get over into reporting about this, right? So oftentimes, almost all the time, I would say, our meeting stakeholders who we're working for would like to see reports on their budget. So over here to the left, we can go into some reports. And I'm going to show you 2 of my favorite reports. I think some of the most useful reports that we have when it comes to budgeting. One moment, there it goes. Okay, so I'm going to go and find, hang on, you can always search like this. Okay, I like this budget overview. I'm going to run this budget overview report and show you what that's going to give us. Okay, so what this is going to show us is a good report of whatever we have entered into our budget thus far. And we can see here I've got my totals, my negotiated, my budgeted, my actual, and then also those savings formulas that I mentioned that I've got set up. It'll also show me that so I can see how I'm doing with savings. I have the possibility to change this report data and add more fields into it if I would like. All of these different possibilities. Remember how I said we can report on cost avoidance, get that in here. We can, any of those fields up top that I was saying are optional or mandatory, it's up to you. You can have those in here. I can include the vendor address, so or the vendor chain even. So if I were in a budget item and I had associated a vendor from the Cvent supplier network, it would have all of the chain and the brand and all of the location information all included with it. I can include the vendor name, whatever you like to include here. These are all of your possibilities. And I can run that with the new data that I have just added, or take some of it out if you don't like it too. You can always remove things. It just gives you a starting point here. So like if I'm not real bothered about the item code, for example, I can remove it. And then I've got a good report of where I stand with my budget so far and the snapshot here at the bottom. And then what I can do is just go ahead and export that and share it with my meeting stakeholder or keep it for myself, whatever you need to do. And that kind of a report, by the way, is also available on a cross-event basis. Like I was saying before, maybe you want to report on vendors that you've used over a certain time period and how much money you've spent with them. This report I just showed you is just for this event, but it's also possible to do it on a cross-event basis. And my second favorite report is that spend per person report that we were talking about. And this is going to come in where we are allocating costs to the participants to our event. What you see here is I can choose to run this for healthcare professionals, for non-healthcare professionals, or for all of the different attendees. So if I choose to do it for healthcare professionals, it's going to go back to that HCP indicator that I was talking about. Anyone who's got that HCP indicator, I'll be reporting on them if I choose this first radio button. I'll say I want to do it for everyone in this case. And I can also, just like I was showing you on the previous report, add whatever information I would like to include on this report as well. I have all kinds of options here. Whatever is important to me, I can do that. And this is what this is going to look like. Give it a second. Okay, so with this report, it gives you a little bit of a breakdown. It says, so for Carol Baker, here's all the items that we have associated against Carol Baker right now and how much they are. So she had, that breakfast that I just entered came out to $56.70 with the gratuity and the taxes. This is everything that Carol has put against her. Okay. So there's something I want to point out about this spend details per person report. If you recall from my budget, I had the car service, I had the lunch, I had the breakfast, I had the dinner and her welcome gift. Those were all line items in the budget that I was entering. You'll also see her air travel and hotel accommodations, which were not line items in my budget, but let me explain to you where those come from. So when we have our registration website and Carol went through her registration, she indicated there that she was going to need hotel accommodations for her stay or for her participation in this meeting. And what the planner is going to do on the back end with all of those hotel requests, and Olivia was showing this a little bit when she was going through her slides showing you how you're going to be managing your attendee data throughout the life cycle of the meeting. We as the planners are going to go back into the hotel request and mark that this hotel accommodation has been reserved for Carol. And once that has been marked as a reserved hotel accommodation, that will also feed this spend details per person report. And so we can see that her hotel accommodations that were reserved for her come out to 300. Similarly, for her air travel, there are ways that when we're managing our attendee data, we can import air actuals. Or if you've got a connection to your GDS and you've got a PNR integration, this would feed that as well. So we've either had that as a feed from the PNR integration, or we've imported air actuals for Carol in the amount of $550. And that will also show here on the spend per participant. So there wouldn't be a need then to enter additional budget line items for those two pieces. They all show up on this report anyway. So this is a great way to see and check yourself. All right, I've allocated costs to all of my different participants appropriately for all of my compliance reasons. I need to be sure I do that. And this is a great report to show you who has what spend associated to them. Okay, so that is what I wanted to show you today. It was a very quick overview, but I hope that you can see though that it's very flexible in the way you can set things up for yourself. And when you're setting things up, you always want to remember, what am I trying to get out of this? Make sure that things are set up so you can get out of it what you need. And you also want to set up that it's going to be easy for your users and your planners to enter in what they need to enter and do it all in one place and do it in this methodical way. So everyone has the same way to do things.
Exactly, Kelly. Thank you. And that was very thorough. I hope everyone got the information they wanted. And if you have questions, please put them in the chat so we can definitely answer them. But before we get to Q&A, we just have a few takeaways to cover. First, just like we've mentioned throughout, budgeting is not just something you do at the end of the event. It is important to incorporate budget into all steps in your planning process to get the best holistic view. And to do that, you start with the standard and defined processes that we've been talking about. So creating something for people to follow to start the adoption of budgeting is going to help drive efficiency in the long run.
Right. And I know that we all know this in the life sciences industry, but compliance and risk mitigation are key for everyone. And proper budgeting is going to ensure that everyone can meet those obligations. And increasing the visibility throughout the organization is going to be a win for everyone, so they can see what is being spent on whom and in what categories and on what vendors.
Perfect. Before we end, we just want to make a reminder to complete the survey after our webinar, just giving us feedback on what we can do for you in the future. And don't forget to sign up for our upcoming webinars that we have later this month and into September. We appreciate you all coming. And if you can't stick around, we will be doing live Q&A for a little bit to answer some of those questions that have come in throughout the session. Thank you all for joining. All right, I think our first question, I will go ahead and read, and Kelly, we can decide how we want to answer. But the first question that came up is, what are some common mistakes that organizations make when implementing budget or spend technology, and how can they be avoided? Do you want to kick it off? And then I
can take that one. Sure.
Yeah.
I think that some mistakes are made, and I mentioned this throughout the presentation here, but I think number one, not considering globally what your needs are going to be, what everyone's needs are going to be. So making sure that the system is set up that's going to work for all of the different regions who will be using your budgeting process. If they don't feel like they've been heard, they might not adopt as well as you need to, and you might not get the information out of it that is needed to comply with whatever regulations they might have in their area. And I also think that you need to have a way that everyone has been trained effectively and has some guidance and something to look back on so that they always know what they're supposed to do at each step of the budgeting process, and have someone on the team who will be responsible for having a view into how the system is being used, how people are doing things, and to be on hand to correct things and to see where additional training might be needed or additional help might be needed to get everyone doing things in the way that you would like them to. And I just think, yeah, having documentation and really clearly outlined methods and processes is going to be something that's important.
Yeah, definitely agree with all of that. The next question that came in was, can you recommend any strategies for ensuring planners are making all of the required budget entries? I can take this. I think the key to this and what we see with we talk to a lot of our clients about is just starting small and only requiring a few fields to begin. So maybe it's just the budgeted and the actual number for some of the specific categories and maybe the most important categories that you need to report on. And then as you gain adoption for those budget entries or getting all that data for a specific amount of time, build upon that. So ask them to require a vendor and all other aspects of the budget within that module. The next question is, how do I make sure that everyone is reporting budgets to their stakeholders consistently? I know, Kelly, you touched on budgeting a little bit, but is there any best practices around how to actually use those?
Yeah. Like I was showing you those standard reports that are set up. I showed you the budget overview and the spend per participant. I think in particular, the budget overview report is something that if everyone uses it, all of your different stakeholders are going to be seeing the same thing time and time again. And I think what a great strategy is actually to do is to, in each of your event templates, you can set up that budget ad hoc report to include all of the different fields that you find to be necessary in the order they are. And if you set that up in your event templates, anytime anyone uses that event template, that same report is going to carry through so that when someone is going to run that report, they don't even need to decide what to include on it, what order to include it in. It's already there so that if they're working with a stakeholder consistently, they don't need to worry about, well, this time I showed you a report that looks like this, and the next time I showed you a report that looks a little bit different. You can have these templates just set up so they can just run them and pass them on to their stakeholders.
Definitely. And I think the last question we have is, how can planners check they've entered all required information during closeout? Obviously reporting, just having those set up reports that Kelly mentioned, but also using things like the different views. So teaching planners or whoever's managing the budget to look by cost by attendee to see if all of the details are filled in per attendee. And also using, we have budget policies that can be used to kind of track what is put into the budget, how it's put in, and what statuses that these things are put in. So using some of those workflow components can help with managing the required spend. And I think we've got
even having a checklist, even having something as simple as a checklist.
I think we got one more question, so we're going to bring this one up. How can the spend per person be used if a registration website is not being built?
I can take that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen that happen before too, where registration is not happening via Cvent. It's being done somehow offline or outside of Cvent. What you can do though is you do need to have attendees. You do need to have participants in your event in order for the spend per participant report to work. So what you could do is, however you collected those registrations, you can take that list and you can import that into your event. You can import those participants so that they're there, available for selection in your spend per participant report, and to associate budget line items to them. So if you didn't have a registration website, it's okay. You can take your registrations and import them in, so at least you've got your attendee list that you can work with when you're associating spend.
Perfect. All right. Well, I think those were all the questions that came in. So thank you again, everyone, for joining today. We hope you got a lot out of this session, and we hope you sign up for future webinars before leaving today. Thank you all, and have a great day.